Hello there, dear friends, and welcome once again to the Relaxed Fantasy Review. Today, we're going to be talking about bad spells again. We're talking about first level spells, the introduction to leveled spells. Most spellcasters get these right at level 1, including who we're talking about today, the Bard. Bards are learned spellcasters, meaning that they cannot swap their spells. When they choose their spells, they are stuck with those spells. There are some options for retraining. DMs can be relatively lenient if they want to be, but bards have a restricted list, and they don't just get to switch them out whenever they want. So when you choose your spells, they need to matter. And the bard list isn't that big, so there aren't that many stinkers in there, but I have myself here a top 5, or should I say a bottom 5, list of spells that I recommend at level 1 bards avoid. But before we get into the list, I'd like to let you know that Relaxed Fantasy Review has memberships now. For just $1 a month, you can support me here on YouTube and get a couple benefits for it. If you click the join button below this video, you get a little badge in your name next to your name in the comments, letting folks know you're a supporter and earning you my undying gratitude. You also get early access to the videos. I upload videos every other day, and I upload the videos a day early for members specifically. If you can't afford to support or just don't want to, that's fine. Thank you anyways for watching the videos. The uploads will continue to come on a regular basis, so you're not missing out on anything. And I just appreciate you being here. So thank you for enjoying the content. So bad first level spells. Let's start with a debatably bad first level spell, Unseen Servant. Unseen Servant is an interesting one. You cast the spell and you create an invisible servant. They are not particularly strong or capable. They have an AC of 10, 1 hit point, a strength of 2, but they're invisible, and they have a speed of 15 feet. You can command them as a bonus action on your turn to move that 15 feet and interact with objects. The spell itself describes the objects as things, menial tasks, folding clothes, preparing food, pouring wine, things that don't take any particular strength. And that's all fine. Utility-wise, if you just want to have someone do your laundry for you, go ahead. You can use Unseen Servant. But practically speaking, there's nothing that this spell does that you yourself can't do. The issue with Unseen Servant is that the spell has a very limited range. The servant can't attack. It can't take the help action like a familiar could. And the level of things it can interact with is only as limited as its strength. A strength score of 2 means it can only lift things that weigh like 30 pounds or so. And yeah, it's not like there's going to be much, like if you're dealing with switches, doors, windows, small objects, an Unseen Servant basically could be like a mage hand, where you're bonus actioning things around the battlefield. But if that's the case, why don't you just use Mage Hand? Because that's a cantrip. That's the thing about Unseen Servant. There's very little that Unseen Servant can do that a Mage Hand couldn't, or that your character couldn't. It really is a flavor spell. And yes, you could have both a Mage Hand and an Unseen Servant, doubling your ability to control the field, but at that point you're getting into really complex object-based interactions. If you're in a campaign, or even just in a dungeon, that have complicated puzzles that require split-second timing to set off switch after switch or press button after button, an Unseen Servant might actually come in handy, but those dungeons are pretty rare. So that's why this is down here. It's a flavor spell with very limited mechanical use. Now, here's a spell that kind of goes the opposite direction. Illusory Script. Illusory Script means that you can write down a message on a piece of parchment And then you cast this spell to create a different script over the original. You can do one of two things. You can either create it so that it just looks like a jarbled mess, so there's no way that anyone can read it, or you can make it so that it looks like a different message. So you're sending one message, but underneath it is a different one. The spell lasts for 10 days, so you can write a letter using this, send it off to a noble or a general or whatever, and if the letter's intercepted, then only the people you designate when you cast the spell can read it. Anyone else can't read it. And then after 10 days, the spell ends, and both the illusion and the original writing disappear. So it's a self-destructing note. This sounds cool. This sounds like an interesting bit of role-play spell. And in a situation where you're playing a campaign with lots of political intrigue, where you have to send notes and there's a lot of spies and, people trying to intercept each other's information, this actually could be kind of fun. But there's two big problems with it. First of all, it is completely undone by True Sight. And yes, we're level 1, so enemies at True Sight aren't particularly big. But it still is one weakness of the spell. The other problem is that the illusory script is still on paper. It's still on regular writing. All that has to be done with this thing is for it to get burned or torn apart. It doesn't protect the message. That's the part that gets me about this spell. Yes, if it's intercepted and a creature tries to read it, your information, your secret information is safe. But if they can't read it, they're probably just going to destroy it. Which means that using the spell to do this didn't protect the message in any way. And if you want, you could hand deliver it yourself as a strong adventurer, or send a caravan of, guards or something. But at that point, why are you trying to keep the message hidden if you're confident it's going to get to its location? It just feels weird. I can definitely see the appeal in very specific campaigns that have to do with secret information, spy campaigns perhaps, but it just feels like there's not a whole lot of situations that's going to come up. You probably are just going to deliver the information yourself, or you're going to send it in a safe caravan, or you're going to use a different spell. The 3rd level spell, Sending, completely undoes this because it lets you send a message all you want. And yeah, that's a 3rd level spell, but this just feels like you're jumping through so many hoops to do something that you could just do yourself. So yeah, I wouldn't choose this one. Okay, next spell on the list, Color Spray. Color Spray is a good spell at level 1. It actually sits in the same exact spot as the spell Sleep, but there's an issue with it. Color Spray is a blinding spell. When you cast the spell, you designate a 15-foot cone in a direction that comes from you. And all creatures in that cone are blinded if a certain criteria is met. What you do is you roll 60-10. 60-10 averages to 33. 33 hit points of creatures are within the cone, starting with the one with the highest hit points. The Color Spray blinds them until the end of your next turn. So if you're fighting, 5 kobolds, for example, they all have 7 hit points each. 4 of them would be blinded, because that would be 28 of your 33, and then the 5th one wouldn't be blinded, because you didn't have enough to encompass his hit points as well. Or if you've got, a goblin captain with 20 hit points, and then 5 more goblins with 7 apiece, the goblin captain would get blinded first, and then there would be 13 on average left, so you'd get 1 more of them blinded. Now, the cool part about Color Spray is that there's no saving throw for this. It just happens. The blinded condition is relatively debilitating. Creatures make attacks with disadvantage because they can't see. Anything that requires line of sight doesn't work. And your attacks come in at advantage because they can't see them coming. So it sounds cool, but there's a problem. And that is that it scales really badly. 33 hit points on average isn't much. At level 1, yeah, you might be able to take out a round of bandits or a bunch of goblins or kobolds with this spell. But the moment you start fighting creatures that are above CR 1/4, this spell might blind one of them. And the other problem is that you can't set it up. See, at least the spell Sleep can be cast at range. You can designate an area from a distance and put creatures to sleep. This is something you cast from yourself in a 15-foot cone. So you were basically using this in a fight. And yes, it'll win you the fight at level 1. So does that make this a good spell? I don't think so. Because there are other spells at level 1 you can use to win a fight. Fairy Fire, for example, gives you advantage on your attacks for the whole minutes. Yes, it takes your concentration, but it also works on anyone who fails a saving throw. Color Spray gives you a round of blindness for some enemies that are close to you. It just feels lackluster. And then as it scales up, you gain extra dice, but those dice only add 11 on average per level. If you cast Color Spray as a 3rd level spell, you're level 5 as a character, and you have 55 hit points that you can blind people with. That's a creature or 2. It just doesn't quite scale the way you'd hope it would. So, yeah. Color Spray is something that could work at level 1, and beyond that, I just wouldn't bother. But it's not the worst one. My personal pick for worst spell on this list comes from the spell Earth Tremor. Earth Tremor was introduced in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and it works like this. You designate a spot within 10 feet of yourself, so it's a close range spell. You cast the spell, and the creature makes a dexterity saving throw. If they fail the save, they take 1d6 damage and get knocked prone. As well, the earth in that area, if it's loose soil or loose gravel or whatever, becomes difficult terrain. What? This is a 1st level spell, and it's doing less damage than a cantrip, and it knocks an enemy prone. Oh, there's a cantrip that does that. There's a cantrip called Sapping Sting. It's from Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. That designates a creature. It's got a longer range, first of all. The creature makes a con save, I grant you, which is worse than a dex save. But they take 1d4 damage and are knocked prone if they fail to save. This is a 1st level spell, does 1 point of damage more on average, and knocks the creature prone against a dexterity save. I can't fathom taking this spell. You can knock a creature prone with the shove action. You can... there's so many ways to knock creatures prone, and Earth Tremor doing that extra d6 of damage does not make up for the fact that you're using a spell slot. And attacking a creature within 10 feet of you, yeah, you could literally walk up and just push them. I mean, I guess if you're a bard, you probably don't have a high strength score, so maybe you're not a shoving type of individual, but don't use Earth Tremor. Like, it doesn't at all. You would think, oh, maybe this is an area. Maybe it attacks, like, several creatures in, like, a 20-foot space, and they all get knocked prone. That might be fine. That would be worth the low level of damage. But it doesn't. It's just one spot, a 5-foot square area, that a creature gets knocked prone in, maybe, and that they take a little bit of damage. Like, this just feels like you tripped someone from distance, 10 feet of distance. I don't get it. I don't get this spell. I don't understand why it's there. I wouldn't bother. Finally, the last spell for a bard from Acquisitions Incorporated, a very undervalued book, Distort Value. Distort Value takes a minute to cast and lasts for 8 hours concentration free. You take an object and you can cause its appearance to either double in value or halve in value by either making it look shiny and bright or making it look scuffed and rusted. Doing this allows you to potentially sell an object for a greater value. Okay, in a campaign where you are trying to make a bunch of gold by buying and selling things, you find an object in a busy shop, you quietly cast this spell to reduce its value so you can buy it on the cheap. Then you take it away, cast the spell again, then you make it look super shiny, take it to a different place, and you quadruple your money. Okay. You could also just steal the object with a sleight of hand check and a stealth check, or you could, use your persuasion to make a, charisma check and just convince the shopkeeper to give you a discount or to buy it at cost. Like there's a lot of other ways to do this, and instead of using a first level spell, which by the way isn't infallible, an investigation check against your spell save DC completely nullifies the effect. A creature can tell that the object has had its value distorted with a simple investigation check, which I think most shopkeepers would probably try to do if you were upselling them anyway. But it just doesn't. It feels out of place. It feels like a spell that wasn't made for D&D. Like D&D is a game where you can steal stuff almost at will, and where gold is maybe at the early game, like as a level 1 character, kind of like color spray. Again, as a level 1 character, this actually could potentially let you buy something with gold you don't have. So yeah, I could see it at the earliest levels of play, but give a character just 1 or 2 levels of play, they'll be receiving gold as rewards, they'll be finding treasure, they'll be finding so many weapons and armor from dead enemies that they could loot and sell. It just feels like this is a pointless exercise in trying to get discounts and make profits, which is the point of Acquisitions Incorporated. It's all about business. But this spell just feels like it isn't needed. A high enough persuasion check, which you're a bard, so you probably will be able to do that, or just a really, really stealthy, sleight of hand check, which, again, you'll have expertise in a couple levels, so you probably can do that too. Distort value just feels unnecessary. A lot of these spells feel that way. Unseen Servant. Yeah, you can do your own laundry and pour your own wine. Illusory Script. Use the sending spell if you're level 5, or just take the message your damn self. Color Spray is okay for blinding creatures, but it scales horribly. Earth Tremor is awful. I really don't like this spell because it can be replaced by a cantrip pretty easily. And Distort value could be replaced with a persuasion check or a sleight of hand check. All in all, these spells just aren't needed. There are so many good spells on the Bard spell list, and these 5 are clunky and in some cases just useless. I don't recommend taking them, and as a Bard, the spells you take matter. So these are the 5 worst first level spells for Bards. This has been the Relaxed Fantasy Review. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe down below. Have a look for the join button down there, and keep your eyes peeled for more spell reviews coming down the line soon. Have a good one, my friends.